All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Blindside Blitz. I am Jim McFee, and of course, right there, Mr. Joe DeCapita.
What's going on, Blitz Nation? Welcome back. We are locked and loaded for yet another episode of Blindside Blitz. And we're going to be talking about a few things here on today's episode. Uh, we got to bring up the whole Bengals back up the Brinks trucks kind of episode that happened with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins locking them both in for long term. What does that mean for Trey Hendrickson right now? And others and much more. So Jimmy, I gotta say, like, I'm super psyched about this. We heard the explosion in Cincinnati when they dropped the bomb of money on top of both those top tier wide receivers. Now you have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins locked up long term together. But man, is that a lot of money invested in the offense?
Yeah, buddy. I mean, and we talked about this last week with Roderick David, former NFL scout for the Titans and the Atlanta Falcons and so on. And we brought this up. Are they really going to do this, or what are they going to do? Are they going to have enough money for Trey Hendrickson? Because I think it would be a shame to kind of let guy like Trey walk because, again, he for most of the time last season, he was their whole defense. And where have they struggled? The defensive side of the ball. And in this offseason, they invest all their money into offense. They just say, Joe says, hey, Mike Gesicki, bring him back. Okay. Hey, this guy, bring him back. Okay. And hey, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, I like both those guys. Let's bring those guys back. They're like, okay, and everyone's like, and here we go. Everybody's all together. Like you said, you see him there in this big thing. But the big question for me is, again, okay, offensive line. You guys struggled a bit last season too as well, where Joe Burrow was constantly getting hit too as well, suffering maybe potentially another injury coming up here. I know he's bulked up to try and take some of those hits here too, but still, you haven't really helped that situation, even though you've invested money in it. You know, the Cincinnati Bengals, out of all the franchises as of late, the last couple seasons now, have invested the most money in the offense out of any other team in the NFL. So they're trying now, and they're actually writing checks now a little bit, Joe. But I think they got to get a little more balance, because I'm afraid, again, that if this team does struggle on offense at times, and they become one-dimensional too, because again, the running game not doing so well last season at all either. Again, people are going to play to that. And if you're not putting up 40 points and outscoring the opponents because your defense is giving up points, it's going to be tough for the Bengals to move forward.
Well, they did get some relief in the running back market. I mean, last year, the first part of the year, I'll say that, it wasn't working out with the guy that they had in place. They ended up moving on. They had a rookie by the name of Chase Brown that everybody knows his name now. In the second part of that season, that's where they started to get the run game going. They utilized him in the passing game as well. And as far as the offensive line goes, it's not like for lack of trying. I mean, the Cincinnati Bengals front office have been investing into the offensive line. You might not always see it in dollars and cents in free agency, but man, have they been drafting to try to turn that into a strength of theirs. And they drafted last year Amarius Mims, who we know was only 20 years old coming into the league. Guy who a lot of people, look at him, he's just a mountain of a dude, humongous player, long arms, very tall, very, 330 plus pounds. Like, the guy is a monster. And they were hoping that he could turn into their lockdown right tackle. Now, on the other side, they're solidified there. They spent some money on the left tackle spot with Orlando Brown Jr. So they have the pieces there where, at least on bookend tackles, they're hoping that they get a bigger jump in development from Amarius Mims in this season. That has to, that remains to be seen. Like, how much better can he get from his rookie campaign to his sophomore? So they have been trying to invest in that offensive line. Now, maybe it pans out, but you know what? They're not going to stop and wait. So what I've noticed what the Bengals have done, and we've had Roderick David, like you mentioned on, last week, we talked about this situation and how the front office is like a skeleton crew, and unlike any other team in the NFL. I mean, they are basically personnel in place in the front office that are doing 2 jobs with 1 person. So it might take them a little bit longer to sign deals and what have you, but here we are. And Roderick David was hit the nail on the head, was absolutely right, and knew this was going to happen and get the deals done. They lock in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Yes, I get it. You're investing a ton of money on that side of the ball. And Jim, you're right. They do need to spread it out and even it out on both sides. But here's where I think their mindset is they wanted to make sure that they got 2 guys, 2 key players, at the wide receiver position that are both in the middle of their prime of their careers. Jamar Chase is seen as one of the best in the league, and T. Higgins is honestly, you could argue that he's the best wide receiver 2 in the league. And those contracts reflect that. Jamar Chase is the highest non-quarterback paid player in NFL history now. T. Higgins is the highest paid wide receiver 2 in NFL history. And guess what? We're looking at this offense. We're saying, God, that's a lot of money. But guess what? I think this is probably where they're being very smart. They lock in 2 premier guys on offense. They're still working currently on Trey Hendrickson to keep him there. Even though he's on the trade block, Trey Hendrickson wants to stay in Cincinnati. The Bengals also want him to stay there. They still have cap room. They still have money to make this deal work. So I kind of expect now that we're sitting here and seeing the numbers and seeing what they have left, I expect the Trey Hendrickson deal to get done. And then they've locked in their big 3 over the course of the offseason, and then they're gonna turn their sights on the draft to bring in defensive talent and build that defense, or at least attempt to rebuild the defense, this upcoming year, where in 2025, that draft is super deep with defensive. So as long as they hit on their picks, they could literally turn that defense right around and have this explosive offense to match up with it.
Yeah, Joe. I mean, and the one thing that kind of works out for this whole thing is Cincinnati said, Trey, go ahead and seek, a trade, see what you can get out there. And there hasn't been a whole lot of noise out there. I know Trey Hendrickson, again, feels himself as being one of, the top edge rushers out there, wants to get paid like it. Again, sack leader last season,
Right.
it talked about a contract a season before and did well that season, but now he performs this season. And again, there's the sack leader. So he's showing you, he's like, hey, listen, I've been showing you guys time and time again that I can still do this. But again, not a lot of, action from other teams out there to see what they're going to do with this. And again, a lot of times you're just wondering, are teams going to play this out and see what happens if they decide to, release Trey or whatever they're going to do. But
yeah, I don't see them releasing Trey Hendrickson at all. I think that what it is the Bengals have a price tag, and they're like, well, if we're going to give up Trey, then we want a humongous return. And teams have scoffed at the idea of like, no, there's no way we're giving you guys that much compensation for Trey Hendrickson. So, we'll just sit and wait until you guys either come down with your asking price, or, maybe he's just going to sit there for a year and play out his contract. And then maybe he looks to go into free agency. But there's that little thing that the Bengals can do is tag him again. They can tag him and keep him there. So I think that both sides want to get this deal done. And because both sides do, it's going to end up getting done.
yeah.
And
And
this
he
will be
said he
nothing
wants
more,
to stay. So
this will be nothing more than just a story that us and many other media outlets have talked about for weeks. And it was fun to talk about it while it lasted. And now it looks like it might be coming to a close.
Right. And that's what's funny, though, is that some other, again, no other teams are teased and things like that. It's not like what you're hearing when some other free agents out there or trade proposals and things like that. And it's even with the Myles Garrett thing. That's what I mean. There was all kinds of action going on. People are like, oh, yeah, well, what do you got? What do you got? This. And then lo and behold, he stays for the payday, and it's not so much. Hey, I want different scenery, and I want a ring.
So
When it comes down
yeah,
to it,
so
those
much
those
for
dollars are just as happy, I guess,
so much for Garrett and his stance on, I'm not signing a deal with you guys. I want
Mhm,
out of here. I want out of Cleveland. And then all of a sudden, a couple days later, he's like, "Oh, I'll sign right there. Yeah, let me cash in on that one." So
mhm,
good for Garrett. Made his money. I mean, I think that if that's what Trey is looking at as kind of like a contract to kind of compare to, and saying, "Hey, Trey has an argument basically saying, I've been one of the most productive pass rushers in the league the last, I mean, you could even look consecutive years and say, well, Garrett got paid this, and I led the league in sacks this year. And so what are we looking at? Are we going to get anywhere close to Garrett? And I think this is where both sides are going to have to work with each other. He might not be able to make the money right now, this upcoming season, like that, but maybe they can kind of backload the contract a little bit or kind of finagle it where even if they gave him a tremendous amount of signing bonus money to kind of offset that price tag, you know. But we know historically, typically, the Cincinnati Bengals front office does not like to do that. They've been so far willing to spend the money, but I haven't seen the Bengals hardly at all, if ever, give up all that give up half of that capital instantly right up front.
mhm. And it goes to show you here now that they, are listening to their quarterback and they mean business and they want to make this push right now with what they have, I guess, because uh, if this kind of falls on their face, though, I mean, and again, you only have, yourselves and Joe Burrow to kind of blame for this whole thing. It's all of a sudden, hey, you go in on these guys. Because that's the thing, though. You don't see teams go for, and let's pay the star wide receiver and pay this guy who's really good too, which could be a starter for somebody, because he's like, oh, he sees himself as, hey, I'm not even a number 2 wide receiver. How dare you? I'm a 1B. And this is 1A over here. So he didn't even go and try and compete to be a starter somewhere else, like we've seen with other different wide receivers, like Christian Cook or Kirk and things like that, trying to be a wide receiver one for the Jags, and that didn't turn out well, but stays with the same team. They invest into these two guys, and it's something that the league you don't really see that often here. So if it doesn't play out for these guys and work out for them, there's got to be a lot of focus, I think, on Joe Burrow and then the Cincinnati Bengals and maybe how they handle this situation.
Yeah, I don't think that they made a bad decision by doing what they did. I mean, everybody knew you got to keep Jamar Chase. You cannot let him go. So they were going to make him the highest paid regardless. So you lock in your number one. Number two, T. Higgins is seen by a lot of people, and he had a huge list of teams that were very interested in paying him the bag and bringing him to their respective club. But I mean, that just goes to show you how the league views T. Higgins. So if he's viewed that highly, then and he's still in his prime, that's the biggest key thing. If if we could say Jamar Chase was 25 and then T. Higgins was like 30 years old at this point, I
Mhm.
don't think you're going to come close to that kind of a number that he got. But the fact that they're both right smack dab in the middle of their prime of the careers, you gotta lock them both up. And now they're putting their attention to Trey Hendrickson. Definitely think that's gonna work out. And knowing that the draft that's upon us, it's really close. It's getting closer every single week. Every day that chirps by. That draft is full of defensive players, and the Bengals front office knows that. So they had a plan for this offseason. All right, listen, we're gonna pay big money to keep our guys. We're going to try to keep Trey Hendrickson. We don't know how that's going to work out, but we're going to try. If we can get all three, the good thing is that we'll have enough money to cover the draft prospects that we draft, and it's a super deep defensive draft. So we can fill holes, we can fill needs or best player available on the defense and really kind of start to turn the corner with that defense as long as and it's a big if, but they have to make sure that they hit on those picks, at least 4 to 5 of them, to have a super successful draft and help turn that the defensive woes that they've had up to this point.
All right. So in other news that's going around the NFL, one guy that isn't very happy here for, I think you would say, but he's such a nice guy though, that you wouldn't even know it at all. But, Kirk Cousins here. They're now named the number 2. It's official from leadership there for the Cincinnati, but I was just talking about the Bengals, for the Atlanta Falcons here. They're going with Michael Penix Jr. and there he is, Kirk Cousins, the number 2. So he's locked in, but with the money that they're paying him too. And again, this guy has get the deals with the guaranteed money here. And in 2 days, March 20th, I think it is, that's when the bonus goes through. And it's another 10 mil on top of that. So he's going to get paid all this money to be a backup for Michael Penix Jr. in the Atlanta Falcons organization, where he wants to try and go be a starter somewhere else. And I'm sure other teams would like to have him there. But again, the Falcons, I think they're looking at it in the smart way. I mean, they got to be like, all right, Penix, okay, I don't think they're going to say, hey, we're going to bench him and switch to Kurt, I think. But no. If he happens to get injured or anything like that, what an investment you have actually right here in Kirk Cousins. And then if somebody's starter goes down or something like that, that you do have that in your back pocket and you could trade him away. And also the fact that if they wait after June 1st, it helps their salary cap situation. And they actually will save money, and there isn't a dead money cap. So if they happen to do make a move, it's going to be after the draft situation to where it's going to be beneficial to them and move forward. But Kirk Cousins, if anything, if he really wants to be a starter here, maybe it's time for him to kind of rustle some feathers here, rustle some feathers for the Atlanta Falcons.
Well, here's the problem for Kirk is there's not that many quarterback needy teams anymore. They've all been signing quarterbacks, veteran quarterbacks that were available. We know that Rodgers is a name that's still out there, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking for a quarterback. The Giants are looking for a veteran quarterback. And then you have the draft. So if I'm Kirk, you cannot wait until the draft. If you want to start in this league, you want to continue your career as a starter, you need to request a trade right now. You gotta make yourself available if in fact you want to start. And what's puzzling to me is the fact that he hasn't done it yet. I thought for sure as soon as this was announced where Michael Penix was going to be the starter, Kirk Cousins, Terry Fontenot, the GM of the Atlanta Falcons, came out and has said repeatedly, we are not trading Kirk Cousins. We're not releasing him. He's going to stay here as a Falcon and be the backup behind Penix. And he said that over and over to the point where like now it's believable. At first I thought it was just all hogwash. It didn't make much sense. Like, of course you're going to move on from him. But no, I mean, he's sticking to his word and he's still there. The puzzling thing for me though is why hasn't Kirk come out and said, I want to trade. I want to still be a starter in this league. So is it because of the money? Because is it the fact that he won't, maybe he's looking at it from a different lens and saying, hey, you know what? I've cashed in on my last biggest contract of my career.
Mm-hmm.
I could take it easy. I don't have to be the starter. I don't have to take any punishment. And I'll be the backup and collect $27 million. So maybe he's thinking about it that way to where maybe he, takes it a little bit easier. He's just going to be the backup in practice and to your point, Jim, it's a very interesting possibility that let's just say we get 4 weeks into the season, 6 weeks into the season, and there's a quarterback injury. Let's just say the Rams with Stafford. Let's just say, boom, Stafford goes down with an injury. He's not going to play the rest of the season. They're still kind of in that running of the division, and they still want to make that push. Maybe the Rams trade for Kirk Cousins, who's still a backup, and he goes to there to become the starter. So we've seen that happen plenty of times with players. And that's a scenario that I really think could play out as we get into the season, because we know injuries happen all the time. And if there's a good team that is making yet another run for the playoffs, another run to even push for the Super Bowl, that could be a last ditch effort to save the season and saying, "Hey, Atlanta, what do you want for him? We'll take on the contract and we'll figure it out from there." So that I see that really is what I could see happen. But if it
Mhm.
doesn't, then Kirk is just going to be chilling as a backup, getting paid all that money. It's crazy to think about, and we normally don't see this happen, right? Like we never see guys that are former starters get paid huge money and in a year's time become a backup to the rookie, and now the team's not moving on from him. That's really interesting, and we'll see. We'll have to see how this plays out. But hey, we're ne- I gotta say we can never be surprised because we've seen literally almost everything at this point.
Yeah, yeah, and then where players end up going and what they end up doing and things. But yeah, I mean that I think this is going to be a thing that's gonna kind of linger. I think until after that. I think for me at least, I look at it as all right. In 2 days, one breath, boom. Now he gets that money kicks in. Now, what's the next step? You're going to do the draft. What do they do in the draft? And then June 1st, I'm looking for that date and saying, okay, man, this is going to be June 1st now. Now, what happens after that? Are they going to try and pull out a trade to try and save the money, or is he going to continue on into the season? Now the season goes, and now you're watching Michael Penix Jr. play, and then he's there. Constantly the camera is going to be on Kirk Cousins. And like, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
he's making this money. Here he is, highest paid, backup out there. And that's got to be frustrating for him, too, because I've watched the quarterback show too. He wants to compete. He wants a championship for him to
Every
kind of
player
roll
does.
over and say, well, okay, I'm going to accept my role now as a, veteran, and still I'm making a lot of money. I'm going to make a lot of money and sit here and I will get banged up, which, I get that that's positive and all, but I think fresh out of, that season and how it kind of ended for him, I think he still is a competitor and has that taste in his mouth. Like I feel he still has something to show her. He wants to show somebody something. So I don't know. I don't know if that ends up
But,
being a thing that he talks to
but
his
that's the
agent and
thing,
then
though.
move forward. But
But that's the thing. If he was such a competitor and still wants to start, how come you haven't requested a trade yet?
mhm,
How come you didn't request a trade when when shit already hit the fan? When you're like, "Oh crap, they're really going to start Michael Penix over me. Oh geez, they
mhm.
want me to be a backup here. They want
But
me
I'm
to keep
wondering,
me here.
yeah.
Why didn't you say anything then? Why didn't you speak up and be like right there, Terry? Hey Terry, hey, you know what? This isn't going to work for me, bro. Like you got to trade me. I'm making that trade request right now because there's 6 to 7 other teams right now that need quarterbacks bad, where I could
Mhm,
possibly be dealt to for a
mhm,
low round pick, and they'll take on my contract. I'll be a starter there automatically. But that didn't happen.
mhm,
We, I mean, if Kirk was really that sure of himself and said he wanted to start somewhere else, but maybe it's also more than just football. We seem to forget sometimes as fans that, oh, he's gonna wanna start. He's gonna go somewhere else automatically. But he's got a family to think about. He
mhm,
just
mhm,
moved to Atlanta. They just got settled in. Does he wanna uproot his family now and just say, "Oh, no, I wanna be traded and want out of here." He's still making good money. Yes,
mhm,
he's not the starter, but you just got to Atlanta. I'm
mhm,
sure that he kinda wants to supplant his roots in Atlanta and then kinda, like, see what happens after that. When his contract is up, we could still see Kirk Cousins in free agency look to start somewhere else for a
mhm,
quarterback needy team. So,
mhm.
hell, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, 40 plus years
Yeah,
old, and
right.
he's still
It's still,
out there.
yeah.
So, uh, that could be a scenario that plays out as well. Or maybe the Atlanta Falcons are simply just waiting for this season to complete itself. Kirk Cousins as the backup. Obviously, to your point, Kirk will be thrusted into the lineup if Penix goes down with an injury, or maybe he
Mhm,
falls flat on his face and doesn't play up to par. They can make that switch. And after this year, then they might kind of revisit the trading Kirk Cousins or flat out cutting him if that's
mhm,
the case. But I think this year, um, it's going to be one of those things where the media is going to be hot on their tails on this one. This subject is
Hmm.
going to bleed all the way through the year. How much is that going to disrupt the development of Michael Penix, knowing that he's going to have to answer questions about this? Like, oh, how are you and Kirk still getting along together? You know, how did practice go? Like, just the constant annoyance of that throughout the year. I just wonder how much that's also going to play a part where maybe the Falcons didn't bargain for it and they're like, "Oh man, it's week 6. Maybe we should think about trading Kirk so we can get, Kirk off the
Hmm.
minds of the media and move and Michael Penix won't feel pressured." But I know like Michael Penix and Kirk have a good relationship, as a young quarterback looking up to a veteran. But I think they both will get annoyed with the mass amount of attention that'll be
Yeah.
brought to Atlanta, and we'll have to wait and see how they handle it. Is it going to be one of these things where they're going to address it one time and that's it? It is what it is, or is this going to be like an ongoing thing, like we expect?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and Kirk Cousins coming off his worst season since 2014. But I mean, again, if you look at the rest of the years here, I mean, a real solid quarterback and takes care of the football, and that's one of the things that you don't see with some quarterbacks, and that teams are definitely looking for somebody to secure the football. That was Daniel Jones's
Right.
problem with the Giants and things like that. Still not being able to do that. Doesn't turn the ball over in bonehead mistakes here for the most part, and fumbles either as well. So we'll see. That's, I think, a thing that's going to just kind of continue throughout the season that we can just
Yeah.
gauge. And there's a bunch of other even underlying stories too, because remember, after Miami season was over, you still got Tyreek Hill. It was kind of like, oh man, I'm down, I'm out, whatever that might mean. And we haven't heard anything. It's been crickets. So I don't know if that all of a sudden is going to sneak up on us at a certain time, or even draft time or
He
whatnot.
even
I'm
made a
not
trade
sure, but
request.
yeah,
He
yeah. I mean, so we
he's
haven't
like,
heard
"I'm out of
anything.
here. I'm
So
gonna get traded." And everyone's like, "Wait,
it's like,
what? What
everybody's
are you
like, no, you're
talking
not.
about? You
Um,
still got a couple
nice.
years on your contract left."
All right. So Joe, we
Ma
have
Yeah.
William Del Pilar's in the house. All right, he's got a message. He says, I don't know. I don't know, guys. He wants a ring. He's age limited and has skills will diminish after much faster now. If he can get to start somewhere else, as much money as he earned, he'll take a less dollars to start. That said, outside of the Vikings, what Super Bowl ready team is there?
None. I
No,
mean,
that's like, and if you think about this point, no, yeah, and that's the thing. I
no
don't think he has
team
a no trade clause or anything like that, too. So it's not like he could be like, "Oh, bring me to a contender."
no,
They're
the
going to send
problem
you
is the
whatever.
fact that if he wanted to throw his hat in the ring when other teams were looking for a quarterback, that would have been the perfect opportunity, but he didn't. So, if you wanted him to go to a contender, well, all those contenders either at this point are set at quarterback. Like,
Hmm.
there's no sorry, there's no room there. Atlanta Falcons, if he was able to hold on to the starting job there this upcoming season, I feel like after the draft and free agency, what have you, the Falcons could make some kind of a run where they can be at least competitive, and you'd never know with that division how
Yeah,
it
no.
goes up and down all the time. Maybe they do win the division this upcoming season, and now they get into the playoffs, and now Kirk is the guy, and everybody's happy. But we never got to see that, and instead, we saw a struggling Kirk Cousins who, to Williams' point, his skills are diminishing right before our eyes. Just couldn't get it done. Now, some of that, it's not all his fault. Some of that was guys
Injuries.
dropping the football, some of that was play calling. There was a lot of variables that go along with it, but he just wasn't executing well either. So, if he wants to make a Super Bowl run, it's gonna have to be with a team that turns it around dramatically this year, and then maybe he could get dealt to them to try to make a run for next season, but as of right now, he's kinda stuck, and you gotta imagine that Kirk Cousins, his agent, everybody that has helped him up to this point in his career, they've all had these conversations. They've all talked about, hey, do you want to trade? Do you want to go to this team or that team? He probably in his mind says, no, none of those situations are a winning situation. No, I don't want to go there. They're still kind of rebuilding, or they're trying to build the rest of their team up. There's just no real answer for him right now as far as a Super Bowl run.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem is he doesn't want to rebuild. I think that this
Right.
last contract when he signed it with Atlanta, he had the projection of the Falcons roster saying, "Wow, they got a pretty good defense. They got a decent offensive line. They got some young weapons. We could win with this team." That
Mm-hmm.
was the mindset. That's why he went
Mm-hmm.
to Atlanta, because
Mm-hmm.
he wanted to once one prove to everybody throughout the league, like, "Hey, listen, I still got it. I can help a team win games and win playoff games and whatnot." It just derailed this season for him. So, unfortunately for Kirk, and I think he knows this, he's not going to be dealt to a contender for sure.
All right, let me put this out there now, though. So, say if Kirk Cousins, just as hypothetical, if Kirk Cousins was out there right now as, say, a free agent, say he's not even be traded, whatever.
Say he's a
You've
free
got,
agent. Okay.
so say he's a free agent. You've
All
got
right.
Russell Wilson and you've got Aaron Rodgers.
Mhm.
Would you pick him over any of those guys at all, or who would you? Or you think teams are still looking at like a Russell Wilson? Would you take Russell Wilson over top of Kirk Cousins?
I would take Russell Wilson over Kirk. And
Really?
yes, because we've seen Russell Wilson be successful. Kirk Cousins this year, he struggled a lot.
But still,
And
number wise, it's really not even that bad, compared to some other starters I've seen before that have been playing. I mean, still, he had a greater touchdown to interception ratio, still 3,500
okay.
yards passing, and even got benched. So,
Mhm.
I mean, again, Russell Wilson, he's a one trick pony. And when it came to playoff time, he shriveled up like a ball and disappeared.
Well, I mean, we can always blame
And
Arthur
talk
Smith
about,
on
again,
these.
things with him that
Like,
what made him great is
because
his legs has been diminished. And I don't think he uses that as much anymore. So, I mean, that's why for me, I'm like, I don't know if it's me. I'd rather, if he was on the open market and you had Kirk Cousins, you had Russell Wilson, I think I would still look at Kirk Cousins,
I
depending
mean, you
on what you
could.
had for money,
I
though. It depends on
I
what,
I
what
mean,
the
I'm
money
sorry.
contract might be,
I'm
though.
sorry. I'm gonna go with Russell Wilson. Like, I think he gives me a better opportunity to win games, and we've seen him at his best with Pittsburgh, where he came in was like a Superman. Like, he was dishing balls to George Pickens deep and everything. But also the other problem with Pittsburgh is he didn't have enough weapons. Pat Fryermuth was in and out of the lineup all season
Mhm.
long. George Pickens was the only legit guy that he could throw the ball to. Sure, they had Austin. I think it's Miles Austin. I can't
Mhm.
remember his first name,
Yeah,
but they
Calvin
had the
Austin.
little scat third
Hmm.
slot receiver that did
Hmm.
well, but he's not the answer. So that team with the play calling with Arthur Smith, that vastly was it just got real bad quick throughout that year, and then the
Hmm.
lack of weapons. Yeah, of course, Russell Wilson struggled down at the end of the season. There was no more surprise anymore, and for Kirk, he had weapons. That there was no excuse. He had an offensive line, and he had a running game. Like, say, so didn't Russell Wilson. But the thing was, is that I saw a greater dip from Kirk Cousins in his production and what he was able to do when he was back with Minnesota than any point in time this season. That it's led me to believe that Kirk is diminishing more rapidly than some of these other veteran quarterbacks. It doesn't mean that he can't turn it around. It's just when you have let's just be honest. I think the best team, if he was a free agent, I might not take Kirk Cousins first, but maybe Minnesota brings him back as a veteran, as a guy that can help JJ McCarthy continue to grow and develop. Maybe you give him another year to sit behind Kirk Cousins because they know that he knows the offense. He's done really well in Kevin O'Connell's offense. Kevin O'Connell is one of the best coaches to work with quarterbacks. We've seen it in front of our eyes. That makes a lot more sense to me only for Minnesota. But for just any other team, I don't think Kirk would be the answer for them right away. Like if the well dried up and Kirk was the only quarterback there, then of course you're taking the starter. Or even I'll even say this: if Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins were the last two quarterbacks, I'm taking Kirk. Not because I think Kirk is the better quarterback, but I think Kirk is younger. He's just as experienced, and he's a game manager at this point. So if you can surround him with talent that can, and a good O line to protect him, then I think you could do well. But for me, that's the problem with Kirk here is that he's stuck right now. He's stuck in purgatory. Can't get out. Can't go to a contender. That's not going to happen. They got their quarterbacks. The only place he could go to is either a team that's still looking at quarterback, would like to bring in a veteran, or an injury happens like we stated before, where okay, it's hit the panic button. Who are we going to go? Let's call Atlanta and see if we can get Kirk Cousins in here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, who knows? We'll see. Again, that's a story I think that'll continue out throughout the season. All right, Joe, again, out in the limelight. This is another continuing saga. Yeah, it's like the movie that keeps going. It's like a movie that keeps getting rehashed and remade over and over again. But the drama behind Aaron Rodgers, he plays the waiting game. Almost like the dating game. Like, oh, I don't know, I'm gonna chill out there, gonna see this person or talk to this person, and then hey, I'll call you later, and then they're like, all right, cool. He said he called me back, and then all of a sudden he's not calling. He's like, I don't know, is he into me? I don't know, and then you got the other person on the other side, the Steelers, like, yeah, are they? But now they're almost like, well, whatever, he's missing out on us because, we're so good and blah, 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 blah. We don't really need him. If he wants to be with us, he would be with us,
Yeah.
So
and the Giants and the Giants on the other side are like, did we say something wrong? Did we say something wrong? Was it something that we said?
Did I mess it up?
Are we losing connection here? Aaron, tell us what's wrong.
Yeah. What was it? What was wrong with me? Oh man. And Joe, go ahead.
And we see, and it's funny because there's been I don't know who even took the photographs, but Aaron Rodgers was spotted on the beach, right? One of his houses. He lives right off the beach. He kind of takes walks and everything on there. The sun is setting. He's looking out into the vast beyond and contemplating what to do. And it's been days where the Pittsburgh Steelers front office, the New York Giants front office have both made offers to him. And mind you, in between all of this, Russell Wilson has taken visits to Pittsburgh, has taken a visit to New York Giants, didn't receive an offer from either team because they're waiting for Aaron to decide what to do. So
poor Russell.
He's got both teams by the cojones at this point.
Yeah, right.
And they're waiting and pleading for him, like, please, Aaron, make a decision. Is it him or is it me? I need to know.
Yeah.
And
what's gonna be, boy? Yes or no?
Judging at this point, it's kind of hilarious.
Yeah,
it's damn near comical that the way he's being treated right now in the media, and it is kind of fun. But
it is funny.
It's to the point now where, dude, you've got two offers. The third team, the one team he really wanted to go to is Minnesota. That's who he really, really wanted to go to for obvious reasons. You look at that team, it's a contending team. Makes sense on his part. But Minnesota is not as into Aaron as Aaron is into Minnesota. It's that simple. They're kind of mildly interested, but they're not going to make him an offer at this point. So here he is deciding which team to go to, Giants or Steelers. And also there's the third option, retirement. And I don't think people have talked about this enough because maybe that's exactly what he's thinking. That's what he's contemplating right now is not just the offers, but okay, do you go to Pittsburgh where they are a winning franchise? You get to work with Mike Tomlin. That defense is pretty nuts. They've added DK Metcalf to that weaponry that they have with George Pickens. And the offensive line is getting healthier for this upcoming year. You got the draft coming up, so they could really start to kind of really build something here in Pittsburgh. You could make a run with Pittsburgh. You go with
Mhm.
the Giants, and we don't know what the contracts are, but I'm just gonna assume that the Giants are offering a little bit more than maybe Pittsburgh is for obvious reasons. You come to the Giants, they're not set yet to make a winning run. They're still gathering pieces, still filling holes. It's kind of it is a rebuild. You know, they're
Mhm.
they're rebuilding from the ground up. They could use him to kind of steady the ship and maybe get some more wins than they otherwise would. Or do you just retire and say, "Listen, do I really wanna go through the rigors of a whole season?" Like, I had one of the worst seasons of my career in New York with the Jets. I got
Mhm.
beat up left and right every single week. I was limping off the football field. Do I wanna risk that again? Do I wanna risk getting injured? And all of these thoughts are in his head all at the same time. So for Rodgers, it's almost like when a player gets to this standpoint in his career where he's literally contemplating retirement is what we expect it to be, then maybe it's time to retire. Because if you have any doubt and you lost the passion to play, to lead a team, and put the amount of work and the grind all year, maybe it's time to hang him up, Aaron.
Yeah, I mean, and he contemplated a bit last season, you'd think, because he
Right.
had said even too, the way he does all this healing, self-healing for himself too, and blah blah. It's harder to get up from all those hits, and you kind of saw the frustration even last season where he wasn't connecting with receivers, but then even
Mhm.
taking hits and kind of being like, it's not like Aaron Rodgers of old. Sometimes he'd give you the eye roll, or he'd be like this, but he'd be like angry, do this or blah blah. Now he's kind of just like, oh man, like this. He's just upset. He doesn't want to do it. You know what I mean? He's like, come on, man. What am I doing this? You know?
Mhm.
And that's like kind of visually what you see, I guess, from him, where you can kind of read into the whole thing. And the fact that he's already brought up that I have other interests. I mean, he loved to do the Jeopardy thing for a little bit. He's always on the Pat McAfee show. So
Yeah.
obviously he likes getting on the shows and being a media personality too, as well, giving his insight into things and stuff like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if he becomes another add-on to that show, even more in depth than he already is, or try to
Right.
spin into something else, that he does. You know what I mean? He could
Mhm.
have a whole nother, I think he already has a Netflix special already, but he could do another one.
Right.
And
Yeah.
who knows? Because that's what this guy is. He's kind of, intriguing in that sense. And they do, it is said out there too, that he's doing this for, attention too, blah, blah. I want everybody to talk about me as long as I can and things like that, which I get to an extent too, because it sounds nice. And like you said, hey, this it's just like, again, a guy who has higher expectations, or I want this girl, but these other two girls like me, this one's really, kind of desperate, whatever. I'm like, I could, but I don't know. I'm like, I really want her, but she kind of turned me down. I think she's, not doing anything. But this girl's a really nice girl here too, and I could have everything I want, I think, too, in this one, but I'm not sure. I don't know if I'm ready, and that's be Pittsburgh, because the Giants, I'm a Giants fan. I actually, when I thought about Aaron Rodgers first, you say, all right, what's all the baggage that comes with this? Oh my goodness. Again, the
Mhm.
media and blah, blah, blah. And hit him, but I think it would improve the team at this point, because you give him, Malik Neighbors and stuff like that. I could
Yeah.
totally see that with this, and Tracy again stepping up and making some more plays, this
Right.
coming season. You've got, our left tackle here too in Thomas, but I think we could work kind of with that. But then if you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, every time I think they're dropping off, they don't, and they kind of reload and they still make a playoff run. I was
Mhm.
surprised they were able to do what they did last year, make that playoff run. And now you've got
Yeah.
not only Pickens, but you've got DK Metcalf on both sides. So you've got,
It's crazy.
you want to talk about two receivers where you got 1A and 1B. That's got to be comparison to what, the Bengals did. But these guys even got Slay in free agency as well, and other stuff, and fed
Mhm.
into this in this offense and defensive side of the ball, to where they didn't even spend a whole lot, didn't lose a whole lot. Just that quarterback situation is
Right.
the question They bring back
Right.
Mason Rudolph, but yes, he had a couple good stints here when he was away with the Titans and stuff. But again, you already had him in the building. You already got to see enough of him and whether he's going to be your starter or not. And
Right
he's
on.
clearly not. So
Yeah.
what is Pittsburgh going to do? Because I feel like for them, especially even Mike Tomlin, I feel like for him, they really want to lock in a quarterback here because they feel like they're in win now mode. And if they don't, then we might see Mike Tomlin move on. And I think that's a real reality.
Yeah, here's the thing is it's whoever let's just say this. Let's say Rodgers chooses Pittsburgh, okay? If that's the case, whoever is the loser out of the Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes is going to sign Russell Wilson. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. So, no matter what, as long as Rodgers doesn't retire, both teams will get a veteran quarterback. Now, it might not be the one that they wanted,
Mm-hmm.
but they're going to be able to bring in a veteran quarterback. And I feel like both teams are in different places, but both have the
Mm-hmm.
same mindset where they both want a veteran quarterback, not because the Giants are going to go on a winning tangent or anything, but it's because they want a veteran quarterback to be there for at least 1 year. The Giants are gonna draft a quarterback in this upcoming draft. They're gonna groom that quarterback, let him sit behind a veteran quarterback for at least 1 year, and then hand the reins over either in his 2nd or 3rd year and move forward, and that's the future. And for Pittsburgh, they wanna kinda do the same exact thing. No matter who the veteran quarterback is that they sign, they also want to go into the draft a quarterback and then groom that quarterback so when that veteran is done going to retire, whatever, move on, then they can plug in their future guy. So, although both teams are on very different sides of the spectrum, they both have the same exact mindset of what they want to do and how they want to go about their future.
But I think the only difference again too is where expectations lie. I think Pittsburgh has higher expectations for their season, and then also
Of
they
course.
feel probably a lot better in this situation just because if they don't get Aaron Rodgers, well, they already had Russell Wilson in the building too as well, and he was able to get them to the playoffs as well. So no harm, no foul. They're still going to get them cheaper than what they got to had them, before. So I think they're going to be okay. You know what I mean? They have nothing really to lose in this situation. Like, oh, no, we don't get Aaron Rodgers. We get Russ back. Okay, well, we made a playoff run. Let's just hope this way. This season, now we've added some players, and especially DK Metcalf on top of that.
Yeah.
Now we can make a further push into the playoffs and get further.
The only,
As far
like
as
I
the
said
Giants,
before,
again, I think this is their own. But for me, again, if it's the Giants, if you don't get Aaron Rodgers, then I understand that you look at Dable and Joe Shane, they probably have to win now because especially for Joe Shane, the decisions that he had made in some of the free agency and offseason
right?
moves rather than just the
Yeah.
draft.
Mhm.
Because I think Drafty's done okay, but I just those again not bringing in Saquon and keeping them there just for
Locking them in.
pennies more,
Yeah.
that was a big mistake. So I think he really wants to try and win here. But for me as a fan, again, they brought in Jameis Winston. I'm like, let's just roll with Jameis and see what the hell happens. I really don't care at this point.
And that might be a reality if Rodgers retires. Whether whether the Giants get
Oh yeah,
Rodgers
that's going to change
or the
everything then.
Steelers get Rodgers, it's gonna have a trickle down effect of some sort, especially if he retires. It's gonna be where does Russell want to go then? Because maybe Russell feels spurned by Pittsburgh saying, "Hey, you didn't want to lock me up earlier. Now you want to lock me up." But Giants want me, so I'm going to go to the Giants. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you know, it could be a big fu to Pittsburgh if it gets to that point. And now, if Pittsburgh's put in a situation, I feel like this is more of a bigger deal for Pittsburgh because they are right there on the heels of winning, the heels of turning this franchise around and really competing for the playoffs. To where if they don't get their guy and they have to force a low tier veteran or even the rookie out there, maybe the season doesn't go as well. Maybe they don't even come close to the playoffs. And it's kind of like a
Mm-hmm.
lost year for them. So it's going to be very critical to see how this all shakes out for both teams. More Pittsburgh than the New York Giants,
Hmm. Hmm.
but nonetheless, we'll say this: that Aaron Rodgers, whether he retires or chooses a team, he's given us a lot to talk about through the years.
Oh yeah.
Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron, so much. Yeah, so Joe, I mean, that's going to be an interesting situation. We've got more to talk about in the next coming weeks, Joe, but
Yes, sir.
we're done for tonight. But why don't you tell everybody how they can see more episodes of the Blindside Blitz, especially moving forward, coming into the season and before the draft, and other great shows just like us.
Yeah, I mean, it's really simple. I mean, I think everybody out there can figure it out themselves, but really just head over to
Right?
YouTube, subscribe to the Blindside Blitz, aka we are on Grumblings Media. So make sure you head over to that channel, Grumblings Media. That's where you're going to find us and many other shows like us, whether it be sports, entertainment, political. If you're into any one of those things, make sure you head over to Grumblings Media. It's kind of like a one-stop shop channel where you're going to get all bunch of different shows, a bunch of different perspectives, great intel, great knowledge of everything, and it's just the only place you need to go. It's that simple.
That's right.
Like, what are you
That's
guys
right.
waiting for? Have you not clicked on the button yet? Do it.
Yeah, just do it, everybody. So yeah, that's it for us. We will be following all these stories. Again, we'll be posting out there the best that we can. And we'll see you guys in the next one.
Hey everybody, this is Big John from Grumblings Media, and I just want to say thank you for watching our content. If you want to support our efforts here at Grumblings Media, just smash the subscribe button right here, totally free, or just go ahead and consume more of our great content. Click either one of these two boxes.